Mortal Kombat conquers every realm of entertainment. Please welcome some of the creative and business minds behind Mortal Kombat: Ed Boon, Simon McQuoid, JB Perrette, and Jeremy Slater for a discussion with moderator Tong.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. How's the lunch hangover doing? Are you guys all right? Everyone's all right? All right, very good. Well, what's up, everybody? My name is Tong, and I'm a content creator and host, and obviously a diehard MK fan. And I'm really excited to host this killer panel about Mortal Kombat because I was, like many of you, maybe the kid who waited in line to play the game the very first time in 1992 with those quarters, like real currency. But Mortal Kombat is an iconic video game franchise. It's reached every corner of pop culture, and the heart of Mortal Kombat has stemmed from the original game, and it is a franchise that has stood the test of time for 34 years. I'm gonna say it again, 34 years. That's impressive. That is really amazing. So, what it's been able to accomplish in all this time and reach new heights and expand to new audiences in the last decade. We've seen MK in every medium possible, including being the first truly successful video game adaptation for a movie. That was back in 1995, if you remember that. And then the film momentum continues with the Mortal Kombat 2 film that we're excited to talk about here. We have the director and the writer here as well to talk about that. So enough of me talking. Let's introduce our guests for this panel. First up, right next to me, Ed Boon, co-creator and chief creative officer of Mortal Kombat and executive producer of the Mortal Kombat 2 film. Give him a round of applause. Next to him, Simon McQuoid, director of Mortal Kombat 1 and Mortal Kombat 2 films. We also have Jeremy Slater, writer and executive producer of the Mortal Kombat 2 film. And finally, JB Perrette, CEO and President, Global Streaming and Games for Warner Brothers Discovery. All right, so obviously the root of all this starts at the game, right? The game is the heart of this. Also, we have something that we wanted to show you all to get you all a little juiced up.
This one arcade game that we made in 1992 has managed to spawn off all these different forms of media.
I'm Liu Kang. It is an honor to duel with you.
Is it possible that the past and future are colliding?
It has begun!
Impressive. Fight! Get over!
All right. So Ed, how do you like seeing all that? Just 34 years, the collection of everything.
Yeah, it brings back a ton of memories, and it's cool to see also Mortal Kombat kind of expanding outside of just the games as well. It's very cool.
Can you talk about really the origin story? A team of 4 guys, right, in their 20s, putting this together, and the creation of the game. Maybe some of the early inspirations for it.
Yeah. I was working in a company called Midway Games, and we were making arcade games at the time. So these are the big coin-op copyrighted games that you would see in arcades. And there was a hole in the schedule, and they wanted a game really fast, and I think they gave us like 8 months to do the whole game. And so there were 4 guys in their 20s who were dumb enough to sign up for a project that quick, but also had the energy to power through it. And we put together a fighting game really quick and had it on tests in like 5 months. And crowds of people were around it. And so at the time, our management thought that we should take a little bit more time, add another character, Sonya, and kind of finish the game off. And after that, it just exploded, And so we just continued to do sequel after sequel, spawned off into other medium. And but it was that group of four, 4 guys in their 20s that were just kind of had enough energy to come up with something, putting all the movies that we've seen, in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and just putting them into one game.
Was there any specific movie or characters that really you would say that was some of the heart of the inspiration?
Oh, Enter the Dragon, Bloodsport, Terminator. There's so many. Any action movie you can think of from the 70s and 80s, there's probably their fingerprints somewhere in Mortal Kombat.
And over these 34 years, as a gamer myself, it's always been Mortal Kombat stood out not only for the fighting and the visuals, but the storytelling. You were really the first fighting game to lean into that storytelling. Obviously, we have MK1 now. So can you talk about how storytelling has become so important and how maybe it's evolved over time too?
Yeah, their very first Mortal Kombat game, a lot of people didn't realize the entire story consisted of a very short paragraph with each character, right? And there was a mystery element to it. So it would say, member of the Lin Kuei, and then they were had factions with the conflicts with the Shi'ar Ryu, and everybody else just kind of filled in the gaps of that. I bet you this character doesn't like this one, and it just really resonated. And certainly fighting games weren't really big on story, but there was a combination of how the characters looked. They were mysterious. There was this mysterious story that just resonated with players, and they connected a lot more. Liu Kang, Raiden, Sonya, Kano, all of them, and that was the kind of the start of it. Now, there are these gigantic productions, hundreds of people work on these games, and we've taken Mortal Kombat. Again, there have been 12 major, chapters that we've told, and we had gotten so big, we're actually, we have about 80 or 100 characters in our cast, and it's just become its own 34-year soap opera that's still going on at the moment. Yeah.
You talk about some of these characters that really resonate and how Mortal Kombat is still so relevant today. I mean, we hear people whooping and, it taps into something that's a part of us. So we're going to open this up to the panel a little bit and really talk about maybe your first experience or your first exposure to Mortal Kombat. And I want to start off with Jeremy Slater, writer of the Mortal Kombat 2 film, because I definitely felt like watching that movie there, and we'll talk more about it, that what I grew up with was translated there. So if you have a story or, and we'll go through the three of you, what was that first impression that you had?
Oh yeah, I was a child of the 90s, so I wasted every single allowance I got just pumping endless quarters into Ed Boon's pockets. And just, I was obsessed with it. My friends we would all gather around. You would cheer on the best fighters in the neighborhood, the kids who knew the fatalities. Everyone hated and respected them. It was a big thing when I was a kid.
Yeah. Simon?
There was a fish and chip shop down the road, and that had the arcade game in it, and we used to play it there and get our greasy fingers all over it. And I think I was just sort of, and we'll talk about this a little bit more, but I just taken by the characters, and that seemed very like breaking new ground at the time. There was something about that just became very engaging for your brain as a little, as you sort of felt that. So the characters just seemed to just transcend and last and grow.
JB?
There's a common theme. We were all started putting quarters in Ed's pocket. We're now putting Benjamins in Ed's pockets. And so...
Facts.
But that was the start of the arcade game was how it started for me.
Okay, we're gonna, we can tell that you guys are enjoying this. We're gonna do a little audience participation here, so feel free to play along here. But if you can, yell out maybe one of those iconic Mortal Kombat phrases, because we're talking about pop culture and how extended. Just let's.
Hey, there you go.
Okay, very good.
Gotcha's a great one. That's a deep cut.
Oh, we got a toasty? We got a toasty back there? Oh, that is amazing. All right, so, we talk about extending to culture, and we're going to transition over into the upcoming Mortal Kombat 2 film. This is coming out in theaters May 8th. All of us were able to go to a fan event and premiere of it last night. That was incredible. So we're going to show you another cool video to just get us juiced.
Uno mas, thanks, Ed.
Seem a little down, Johnny. You're normally a little more animated.
Finish him! Johnny Cage, Kitana, Shao Kahn, Liu Kang, Jade, Jax, Sonya, Sindel. Whoa! Fight! Raiden, Kung Lao, Shang Tsung, Baraka, Quan Chi, Scorpion, Bihan, Kano. Let's fucking go!
Mortal Kombat 2, May 8th. Get tickets now. Experience it in IMAX. Rated R.
Woo! I mean, we have the director and writer of that. This is awesome. So, Simon, I'm going to start with you here. There's obviously been several iterations of Mortal Kombat over time. You directed the first film and also the second film that's coming out on May 8th. So maybe for you, can you talk about your vision with this Mortal Kombat 2 film and what makes this different than some of the previous live action that we had before?
Well, I mean, there's actually been, how many had 4 films? 5 films? 4?
4.
4. So dating way back, and then there was a bit of a gap, and so we picked it up in, and in 2021, the Mortal Kombat 1 was released, and then 2 comes out. So the interesting thing, so when I was sent the script for the first one, I want to build worlds, and I want to create and make propulsive entertainment in a massive theatrical experience, right? So that's what I want to do. And so when I got this script, I was just immediately knowing these characters that Ed and his team had created over the years. Those characters are very, very powerful. And I just thought, well, good movies and good storytelling on the screen is all about characters and all about their relationships. So I really was drawn into that idea, and the idea that we could take these iconic characters and expand them out and put them on the big screen. That was a really exciting creative challenge for me. So that was sort of coming into the first one, and then after going through that process and learning more and more about what Mortal Kombat has to offer and what this treasure trove of goodies that Ed has created. Coming into the second one, it really was about embracing the whole maximalist approach that Mortal Kombat has. And the thing about it's kind of a really interesting mixture of different elements. So you have comedy, you have brutal violence, you have quite dark moments, you have really crazy looking characters, you have characters that don't seem they should be in the same world together, but somehow it all works, right? So you've got this amazing alchemy of ingredients. And so I just thought, okay, with this second one, we've just got to swing hard here, and we've got to go to this sort of maximalist quality and really embrace that to make an even bigger experience on the screen. And we knew that IMAX wanted to be involved, and we embraced that opportunity. And so that was a big part of the excitement about coming into number 2. But what is very, very important, if I go back to character, so what we needed to put with that scale and that visual joy is we needed the characters to have very primal, heartfelt stories and journeys that they go on through this story and this film. So if you don't have that, it doesn't matter whether you're sourcing from a video game or a book or whatever it is, that is why people go to the movies. and that's why we watch them. So you want to connect with the character, and you want to go with that character. And I felt that I wanted to balance the ledger and get some more of our female representation in the movie, because it was a bit of a dude fest the first time. So we've got Katana and Jade and Sindel coming into this one, and having Katana as being the heart of the film, and we've got Johnny Cage as the sort of the other side of it, and they become these two pillars within this film. But it's very important that we have this beating heart at the center of it, and so that the opportunity and the joy of it is you feel when you see a fatality or you see this incredible fight scenes, you care because you don't want anything bad to happen to the character you're going on that journey with. So it sort of has all the ingredients. It just then becomes a question of sort of balancing all that alchemy.
Now, this is fun because you talked about putting on these large screens, and we know that IMAX is there. And in a previous interview, you had kind of teased that there was something special for IMAX, and my brain was wondering, okay, what could you actually do? So you haven't actually talked about this publicly yet, but could you reveal to us what is this IMAX format, I guess, Easter egg or bonus that people that are watching the movie can get from it?
Yeah, so in working with IMAX, they're an amazing creative partner, and we sort of went through this process of what we could do with the screen and what the aspect ratio is, and it's massive, and it's like when you go to a really big IMAX, it's like you're sitting and you're looking at the whole thing on the side of a building. It's this sort of giant wall, and you are completely immersed. And so I looked through. They have a wonderful. We went through a lot of the previous films that have been and used IMAX, and I wanted to give a little bit more than just simply saying, oh, we've got more real estate and it's a bigger screen and you see a bigger. So I thought, okay, well, we've sort of embraced the visual language of the game a little more in the second film. So I wanted to keep that idea going. And so what we've done, if there's any super fans here, you should go and see it in IMAX, because at the top of the screen that isn't in the regular theatrical experience, you will see up in that piece up there that in four of the different levels when there's a fight, you will see just fleetingly through camera move and through the way we move the set and so forth, what comes into play at the top is part of the environment, and in one case it's these metal rusty bars hanging down. They actually look like the health bars on the game. So when you start the fight and your health bars are at the top, we just get this little fleeting glimpse that was sort of built into the scene of the health bars. So my hope is that people will kind of want to freeze that and have that and be like, okay, look, it looks exactly like the game. So, but I didn't want to just do it as a straight up thing, and it's also purposefully quite fleeting. So we've got a few of those sprinkled in there, and there's also another moment where there's a misdirect is needed. So you think two characters are going to fight, but then we sort of rug pull, and actually it's not those two. And what Ed has done in the game is every time you go to fight, the screen opens up and then you fight. So we did the same thing. I was able to open up the screen. You feel that like, okay, these guys are about to fight, and then we find out that they aren't fighting. So having IMAX gave us this, it was an amazing sort of new opportunity to sort of add other things that are really special.
I mean, that's awesome, because at the screening, we actually didn't see what you're talking about. So it gives me obviously another reason to go see it in a full IMAX. So that's super sweet. Okay, we're gonna also talk about now here building the script and expanding the universe, because again, I kind of talked about it and mentioned it with Jeremy's work here as the writer, how this felt like what I expect as someone who's played this game for 34 years and beyond. So Jeremy, we know that this is a beloved franchise. It has some of the best storylines and storytelling in video games. So how are you crafting a story that appeals to longtime fans like myself, but also, right, new audiences, which is who you're also trying to attract?
Yeah, I think anytime you're dealing with intellectual property of any sort, you're serving two audiences. There is the audience of the hardcore fans who I talked to some of these guys at the premiere last night, guys who were saying Mortal Kombat has been the most important thing in my life for as long as I can remember. And they know every detail of the mythology. They can rattle off statistics and facts. But you can't make the movie just for them, because it would be 6 hours long and it would be indecipherable and really just turn off everyone else. But at the same time, if you make the movie just for the casual audience and you ignore that fan base that's been supporting you and that loves these characters, then you sort of wind up with a product that satisfies nobody at the end of the day. So to Simon's point, it's really about sort of, you've got to get the details right. You've got to get the important things right. You've got to show the fans that you are approaching this with love and care and reverence, but you also have to make sure that the newbies who are walking into the theater, who may have never played these games in their life, they have no idea who the characters are. And I talked to a few of them at the screening last night too, who said, I had known nothing about Mortal Kombat and now I am suddenly a fan. That movie was incredible. I love that. That's the sort of dream reception that you hope for. If both of those two audiences walk out of the theaters happy, that means everyone up here did their job.
And part of you, with the storytelling and writing, this has a myriad group of characters. I mean, this is a cornucopia of characters, and everyone has a different journey and story. Who are the characters that you really wanted to focus on, is like Simon kind of alluded to, the pillars of this movie, and why?
For me, one of the joys of Mortal Kombat is that every time you put in that quarter or pick up that controller and choose a different character, you get an entirely different story. So I think everyone was in agreement starting off this journey that, the last movie was kind of Cole Young's journey and we told that story. Let's bring in some fresh fighters. Let's bring in some fresh blood. And tell a story with a slightly different tone and a different feel. So the two emotional pillars, like Simon said, Princess Katana, played by Adeline Rudolph, is phenomenal in the movie. She has a pretty tragic backstory where her father gets killed by Shao Kahn in the opening moments of the film. Spoiler, but it's in all the trailers. Not a spoiler. And her mother gets kind of imprisoned. Her people are enslaved. Her throne is taken from her, and she's kind of forced to serve as a sort of bodyguard for the guy who did all this to her. She is put in this horrible position, and she, has to kind of like choose her sides of, is she going to fight for the good guys or the bad guys? So she brings so much heart and warmth and drive to the story. And then the other pillar is really Johnny Cage, who's played by Karl Urban. And there's been a lot of versions of this character over the years, and a lot of times he's used sort of primarily as comic relief. But we knew that if we wanted a big actor, if we wanted to get someone like Karl Urban, he couldn't just be the guy sort of standing in the background saying a few funny things. We had to give him a real journey. So we re-envisioned the character a little bit so that when we meet him, he's not necessarily the biggest movie star on the planet. He's someone who used to have that. And now his star has sort of faded, and he sort of watched his one chance at greatness slip through his fingertips. So just by making that small recalibration, it changed him into a character that now you really have a vested interest in rooting for this guy's journey and wanting to see him succeed.
Well, I know that this was a super collaborative movie experience, just from many levels. We talked about it coming out here, and Ed, you had an addition to your title as executive producer of Mortal Kombat 2, the movie. That's why his title was so long. But what I wanted to say is that working together, and maybe Simon and Jeremy can chime in here, what was that collaborative experience like for you first, Ed, to really be a lot more involved in this movie than the first one, correct?
Yeah, I mean, you pretty much summed it up. It was much more collaborative. We began our discussions much earlier in the process. So as Jeremy was writing, we were giving feedback, and he was unbelievably agile in terms of his ability to keep a cohesive story going while 50 voices are chiming in. And I also had the pleasure of going onto the set, and they flew me to Australia, and I think they were filming the Jared and Shao Kahn fight at the time, and they were just amazing in terms of just the back and forth, the the exchange and collaboration again is the word I would say. So it was a great experience, and I think the final film product is going to reflect that.
For Jeremy and Simon, are there maybe even, I'm putting you guys on the spot, but maybe a nugget or a moment that you remember, like, oh, this was a collaborative moment where, having Ed as part of the team, like, really helped push this in a different direction or things like that?
Well, what I wanted to happen was to have this sort of creative collective from the beginning, that each of us brought a skill set that just continued to plus up the film. And I think we arrived at that team very early. And so what was happening was as it was going, we were just building that. And it was really, we would have lots of conversations about the tonality, and because you've got these, as I said, all these disparate characters and just different facets of it. Those tone conversations are very helpful. Also, to be able to sort of just reach out to the Grandmaster over here and say, why did you do that? Or what's behind that idea when you did it? So just to get this sort of little nuggets of information. Actually, I felt far more relaxed a bit going into it, because I knew I could just reach out and ask Ed. Whereas, so that was really helpful for me. And one nice little story I really enjoyed as we were into pre-production, we were trying to work out what Johnny should wear when we first see him in Uncaged Fury. And, there's obviously multitude of choices in the game that you can just flick through and decide how you want them to wear when they're fighting. And so we're sort of going through, and I wanted to get Ed's thoughts on which one it should be. And I said, I'll send you what I think, and you send me what you think. And luckily, and I think it sort of shows we were on the same page, we both sent each other the same thing, which is what Johnny fights in Uncaged Fury. So it was just a really, and as we went on, we got to know each other more and more, and it just became this really enjoyable process. And it's just, when you're all walking in the same direction, you make better product.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitively say this movie would not be as good as it is and as satisfying as it is without Ed, without his whole team and NetherRealm. They bailed us out of the fire so many different times. But also, like, why go to Wikipedia and look up a question when you can go straight to the guys who invented it? You can go straight to the experts, and you can say, guys, what are the stages that the fans come up to you and say, this is what we want to see? Why have you never done this? Why have you never done these moves? We could ask, go straight to the horse's mouth, and they were able to give us so much information that really shaped the structure of the movie. It led to some of the biggest crowd-pleasing moments. I really have to give them all the credit. They have been amazing collaborative partners.
It was also rather nice when sometimes I'd ask Ed, expecting quite a kind of deep, complex answer, and I'd say, why did you do this? And he said, we thought it'd be cool. I was like, okay, good.
All right, now we're gonna jump over to, because again, there's so many tentacles that Mortal Kombat has reached, and jump over to the streaming and HBO. JB, we're gonna get you to talk now.
Oh,
right.
phew.
Thank you for.
I have nothing to add on the movie. It's fantastic, but I played no part in it. But I do think, by the way, it's an interesting full circle moment, because Ed talked about the origins of some of the creative being from some of the movies that you saw. To then, Simon, to your credit, really now you see so many more game adaptations into movies, into series happening. But back in the teens, that was pretty early on, and Mortal Kombat was really an innovator in coming from the game world to the big screen. And so it's a really interesting full circle moment here for a franchise that keeps innovating and has been innovative from the early days, gaming to movies.
Well, on your side, what's really interesting is Mortal Kombat, I guess, are we going to call it the reboot in 2021? That came out on streaming, on HBO Max. This is during the time of the pandemic. It did release later in theaters, but it did do incredible streaming numbers and also perform well in the theaters. So, you're really sitting at this intersection of, I guess, games and streaming in your role. Can you talk about bringing the iconic Mortal Kombat franchise to streaming, and maybe what did you learn from its performance during that time.
Yeah, I mean, I not to take even less credit, given I wasn't even around at the time this happened, so I'm going to recount the story as best I can, but it was, not only the best performing launched movie in 2021 on the platform, remembering that in 2021, HBO Max was still, distributed in only about 40% of the world, and so it didn't even have full footprint. And it did in its launch weekend, almost 4 million viewers, which is the biggest number of the year for HBO Max in that year. The other thing that talks about the universality of the story that they told and the franchise is that it worked everywhere. It was a franchise that worked in the US, it worked in Asia, it worked in Europe, it worked in Latin America, which was huge. And then we look at engagement, obviously, as a really important metric for how much people are watching. And the movie, we looked at completion rates, which is the number of people who've actually started and then completed watching a series or movie. And average movies will do 3/4 of the people will watch the entirety and a quarter will drop out. This movie, almost 90% watched the full movie. So its engagement rates were way higher than the average. And so on all metrics, it did a fantastic job. And I think at the time, because it was such a weird time, Simon, it was a weird, obviously it was pandemic still, and it was awkward to be releasing stuff on streaming at the same time as theaters, but it really helped because if not that many people were going to the theaters, I think, Simon, you would know better.
Well, yeah, it was as we all remember, it was a bizarre time, and I remember getting the phone call that it's like, hey, I know we were going to just release this in theaters, but we've made a business decision to release all our movies on HBO Max and in the theaters at the same time, and I must say, I just felt grateful that it was still being released in theaters. I sort of was like, there's plenty of people at the time suffering horrendous fates, and I just thought, well, I'm just lucky that we're doing that. So, but what and from those, what was really interesting was it did well at the in the theater. But to have those box office, the HBO Max numbers and those metrics, and understanding this sort of amazing performance it had on the streaming platform, I think that was the reason we got greenlit to make a second one. That we had all these metrics that JB is talking about, where it was evident that there was a great desire for this, and what it did, and this is a really important piece of the ingredients in making the second film, it created this climate of confidence around the title. Everyone really understood it. Got people who didn't know much about Mortal Kombat within the kind of the studio understood it, and this climate of confidence came around it, which meant that we could swing much harder going into the second one and line up our vision so that you end up with a kind of a wild ride that we've made. So it's a confidence surrounds it, and then you all have parallel paths together, and that shows on the screen.
JB, I mean, obviously it's pretty clear that with HBO Max, having gaming IPs is an important part of what you all are leaning into. Do you think that you're going to keep on continuing this trend with other gaming IPs on the service?
Well, I mean, not just within our own portfolio. Obviously, we partnered with Sony and The Last of Us. And I think Simon said it earlier, but I think it's important. There were a lot of attempts to take gaming IP into the sort of two-dimensional, either TV or movie world, which didn't work. And to Jeremy's credit, to Simon's credit, you really still have to find a great story and someone who can write a great story. And the world that Ed and the team has built is rich in characters. I think that origin, when you talk about what makes it last 34 years, the characters are wide, there's a large number of them, and they're deep, and even that early seeds of those paragraph blurbs that Ed talked about, which sort of gave you a little bit more context and mystery and curiosity. They had kick-ass outfits, and then the dialogue, even from an early days, was iconic, And so I think all those things breed for great things with when you can get a talented writer to bring it to life in a new way. are great. And we are, leaning into that when it makes sense. Obviously, on the theatrical side, we had Minecraft, which was a huge success. We had Last of Us on HBO Max, and those are great for a streaming platform like HBO Max because they've got visibility, they've got an install base that is known and loves the franchise, and generally those are universal. They work everywhere. And as we globalize, it's more and more important for us to have IP and stories that can resonate around the world.
And also, what is really more of the strategy that you and the team with Mortal Kombat have, right? You're a multi-platform universe, so it's not just games, it's streaming, it's movies. Are there any things where we can see some of this cross-pollination happening around the movie? And this could be for you and Ed.
Well, I don't think we're going to break any news today, Ed, that I'm aware of. But we definitely have active conversations to take the franchise in more directions. So we will share that. Stay tuned. I don't know, Ed?
No, that's accurate. There's a number of pots on the stove that are just about to be boiling, and I'm sure there will be announcements that will come not too distant future.
And then we're in active discussions about where to take the game, obviously, with the success of MK1 and where does that future take us. There's a lot of really good, fun discussions going on around where to take the franchise going forward.
Well, I know one thing that we know, in case you haven't heard about, there will be a third movie. That's been confirmed. So I can say that publicly. So that's one of the things that we can look forward to, just the extension of Mortal Kombat. So do you have any other thoughts or parting words just about being involved?
No, my only thing was these guys were being very kind to me as far as, they wrote the movie, they directed the movie. One of the feedback that I gave, like one of my favorite stories is, there's a sequence with Baraka and Johnny Cage where they're fighting, and Baraka says this line that's supposed to be a funny line, and I wrote this long email saying, that is not Baraka, you shall not do this, and then Jeremy was like, trust me, it's going to make a big laugh. I go, fine, you want to ruin the movie, that's your problem, And it got the absolute biggest laugh in the entire movie. And so with friends, I tell them, yeah, I wrote that line. But as far as like where it actually came from, so there was plenty that I had said, just coming from a video game designer perspective. It's a different medium, so it's great to have people who know what they're doing as far as film, animation, other forms of entertainment that we can partner up with and come up with something that's fitting for that medium.
Ed's also being very humble, though, in the sense that I've worked on a lot of video game adaptations with a lot of potential developers, and they haven't been collaborative in the same way. They haven't been partners in the same way. You get the sense that they resent you for trying to take their success and translate into a different medium. And to Ed and Dominic and everyone at NetherRealm's credit, they've never wanted anything but the best for this movie and for their fans. And I think everyone up on this stage is fairly ego-free in terms of the best idea wins, what's best for the fans, what's best for the audience is what ultimately kind of wins at the end of the day. And I think when you approach collaboration with that mindset, that's how you wind up with something like Mortal Kombat 2, which I think is a movie that succeeds at everything it sets out to do, and the fan reception is really sort of proving that. But it is but we would not have had that without that collaborative environment that these two gentlemen really nurtured.
And just a quick question, how did it feel to be in that audience, to get those reactions to the movie? I mean, how was that for you guys?
It was phenomenal. I mean, it was just to see and hear people having an amazingly fun time in the cinema was unforgettable. I'll never forget that at all. It's very satisfying.
Yeah, it was great. My creative partner who created Mortal Kombat with me, John Tobias, was also there. He brought his son, who's like in his late 20s. He wasn't even born when Mortal Kombat started. So it's a great full circle moment. And but having John there to me was a big deal because he was a big part of Mortal Kombat.
It was great.
All right. Well, this was just an amazing panel. Thank you so much, and we will continue to see you. 34 years. We're only halfway there. We got a long more road to go, right?
That's right.
All right. Well, thanks everybody, and thanks for everyone here hanging out with us.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, guys.